What is going on, football fam? This is Dave Sarner, your host of the Rise and Fall Fantasy Football Show. Welcome to the Week 6 edition here, as we're going to get into every single matchup, every single game, and every single player that you guys need to know about going into the big bye week season. And let's face it, Week 6, we're pretty much halfway through the season now, getting ready for the big playoff push. If you manage to go 4-1 or 3-2 or 5-0, you're really feeling good right now, especially with the way this season has. And if you're at 2-3, 1-4, or even 0-5, I get it. Everything looks bleak right now, but let's be clear. This is the kind of year that anything can happen. I was 1-6 one year, and I ended up coming back winning 6 straight and won my championship. So there is hope. If you guys have had a rough season, but you're making deals, you're trying to, get your team back to where it needs to be, there is still hope. And I'm hoping today I'm going to be able to help you here on the Rise and Fall Fantasy Football Show Week 6 edition. Now, before we get into the episodes, just keep in mind that we record these episodes every Tuesday night or every Wednesday morning. So if there are any news, notes, and updates that do occur after and Wednesday afternoon on, make sure you guys keep on top of that. Check out World of World, check out the Yahoo and ESPN notifications on fantasy, and make sure that you guys have the right guys in your lineup. With all that being said, let's get into the matchups here for Week 6. The first matchup we're going to get into, guys, is a matchup that we already discussed last week, but it's a Week 5 matchup that got moved to Week 6, so we're going to discuss it a little bit more now. You got the Broncos and the Patriots. Now, this week, guys, if you notice, I added a couple things here. So we do have season stats now, so we're going to get an idea going forward of positional value overall throughout the year. From team by team, you'll start to see some trends here or there. Especially when you're looking at the tight ends. Just keep in mind when you're watching this video, look at the tight ends and look at the numbers they're putting up compared to other positions, and it's not even funny, the comparison. Now, Broncos is a weird comparison. It's hard to say that one exactly. And Sony Michel's, I don't know what happened there. But long story short, you'll see Julian Edelman even having a bad year is putting up 40, and that's the same as Noah Fant, who's one of the top tight ends in fantasy, who has overall 45 fantasy points right now. So keep that in mind when we go over these things today, guys. The tight end position is really weak this year overall, outside of maybe like Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. But that being said, we do have this matchup. It's a 1 o'clock matchup on Sunday, and Drew Lock might be back in this game, so there is a little bit different analysis than last week. Now, we still have the stats from last week, or the week before, rather, when they were coming into these games. So obviously Locke will be back. Phillip Lindsay's supposed to be back as well. So Gordon, his value might go down a little bit. And I tell you why, because the Patriots are really, really good against the run. It's going to be a tough matchup in the run game overall. I do expect out of these running backs, maybe James White is the guy that scores a touchdown from both teams. It just seems like the receiving game is going to be where these two teams are going to try to get it going. Obviously, Cam Newton will get some of the rushes for Patriots too. But I think Damian Harris this week is a tick down, as well as Rex Burkhead. It's a hard situation for me to feel comfortable with. So obviously, if you need to play him, go for it. But I have my rankings also this week, guys, that I will be releasing at the end of the week, free for you on Twitter. We're going to have a nice little thread of posts per position. And this will change as the week goes on, as we get updates. But for right now, I did want to put this together to give you guys an idea of where I'm seeing these guys right now. And so, for example, when I look at Damian Harris, I know I have to scroll down. I have him 31st on my list as of right now. He is just ahead of Adrian Peterson and maybe Mark Ingram, and that's debatable at that point. And then I have Jerick McKinnon. I have James White 2 spots ahead of him. I even have Josh Kelly and Chase Edmonds, as well as Devontae Freeman ahead of him. So those are guys that I like a lot better than Damian Harris this week. It's not a good game for the rush game, I'm telling you. The only guy that might benefit a little bit from that, in my opinion, could be Cam. With that being said, James White, I do like him from a pass perspective. I think you can throw him into your lineups in the flex, and he's going to get you. He has a good floor, and that's what I like about James White right now. If you're struggling, especially near the flex, and you need that floor, James White is really solid. He'll get you in a half-point PPR minimum of like 8 to 9 fantasy points usually. In a full-point PPR, you could definitely go with him and feel comfortable. Non-point PPR is a little different. He's not getting the touchdowns right now, so I would say it's not as much of a win-win for me on that one. But half-point PPR and above, James White is definitely startable. He is, if anything, the guy that I like in this matchup. I have Melvin Gordon ranked pretty high, but I am a little bit lower on him. He's at 14 this week, guys. Guys I have ahead of him, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even in a tough matchup. You know, I have Todd Gurley in a much better matchup, in my opinion. James Conner, tough matchup. Ronald Jones, we'll talk about him, but he has a really good matchup this week. Sneaky good matchup against the Green Bay Packers. So there are a lot of other options that you can do. Plus Philip Lindsay coming back does scare me and cap my excitement about Melvin Gordon. This is not a game that I'm going to start Melvin Gordon, of course. If you have him, most likely he's one of your 2 starting running backs. But if you have a better combo, guys with a better matchup, I might go that direction. We just don't know how the Drew Lock's going to play coming back. He could end up getting hurt again. Who knows? That being said, I do like Jerry Jeudy this week. As we talked about, the running backs are tough, but the wide receiver position is pretty good. So I like Edelman this week as well, by the way. Edelman I have pretty high up there. If I go down to my wide receiver rankings, let's see where we have Edelman. We have him at 27, just ahead of CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Tyler Boyd, Darius Slayton, guys like that. He's kind of at the tail end right now of, of the rankings in terms of like guys who are like must starts. Only because I don't know 100% if Cam's playing. If Cam's playing, Julian Edelman's going to get up. I think I even have a note for him. If Cam is in, he's going up, right? So I'm going to raise him a little higher. I expect him to have a good game. N'Keal Harry gets a tick up as well. I have him on my rankings. Again, if Cam's going, he will get a nice ranking up. If not, he's at the bottom. I wouldn't put N'Keal Harry anywhere near my lineup unless Cam is a quarterback. Looking at the tight ends, Noah Fant, if he's back, you're going to play him, but don't feel super excited about this. Patriots do play the tight end very well. They're 25th in most points given up. They are giving up like the 6th fewest points or something, or 7th fewest points, the tight end position in the NFL. With that all being said, the tight end on the other side, there is no tight end for the Patriots. So even though it's a decent matchup, you ain't going to go that route. And then like we saw here, Cam Newton, for me, guys, is a must start. I have him at number 4 on my list this week. 2 weeks off, and it wasn't an injury that had him off. It was just COVID, so if he's feeling better, good to go, then he's healthy, it's fine. Drew Lock is coming off an injury and doesn't have Cortland Sutton, so has to kind of now really get his rapport with Jerry Jeudy and some of these other guys coming back, and Tim Patrick and so forth. So I think it's going to be a struggle against a really good defense for the Broncos. And at the same time, I'm not as comfortable going with my Broncos. I do love Cam. He's a must-start for me, in my opinion. He's a top 5 quarterback this week. James White, love him in the flex. Edelman, if Cam is going, I think Edelman's also a must-start. I think he's going to be the recipient of a lot of catches. N'Keal Harry, you could play him if Cam's going. Damiere Byrd, I mean, he got targets, no doubt about it. I would kind of wait and see how he does this week if you did pick him up. If most likely a lot of people didn't, but if you did, wait and see how he does this week. I wouldn't go crazy about him just yet. And then Patriots defense, you're going to play. It's a good matchup for them. Denver defense, if Cam is out, you play them. If Cam is in, you don't. Moving right along to the next matchup, guys, we have the Houston Texans against the Tennessee Titans. Now, we saw the Titans last night on the Tuesday night matchup. They came out swinging. I mean, they had 2 weeks to prepare for that game, so Ryan Tannehill looked phenomenal. A.J. Brown's back, and this offense clearly missed A.J. Brown. I mean, that's the easiest thing you could say. I know they had all these COVID things going on, so they had other receivers out. But let's be real here. A.J. Brown is the dynamic playmaker here. Without him, you don't have that over. It's kind of like with the Eagles. If you don't have A.J. Brown in, or you don't have the over-a-top speed guy that could really spread the field, you're not truly going to succeed. They'll win games because they're stout in other positions, running back, offensive line, defense, and so forth. But last night, I think they dominated because of what A.J. Brown brought to the table. It opens up things for Jonnu Smith. So in my opinion, if A.J. Brown is in, Jonnu Smith is in, obviously. Jonnu finally put up that game that I was waiting for him to do, that I thought he could be that top 5 tight end this year. Well, he proved it this week. He really put it up big last night. Derrick Henry, despite a tough matchup, played really well. I think in a way you can kind of say Derrick Henry could be matchup proof. He's just not getting the receptions that they said he was going to get. So I'm curious to see if that actually even goes up this week because, again, he had a decent day. He had 2 touchdowns, 19 points, but 19 carries for 57 yards. Last night was pretty touchdown dependent for Henry. And it was really because of miscues from Buffalo getting, short fields for the Titans that he really had a good game. So I need to see more from Derrick Henry from a reception standpoint. And listen, guys, this matchup is the kind of matchup you do it. Houston Texans, fourth most points they're giving up to running backs. This is a prime matchup to Derrick Henry this week. He is a top 2 fantasy running back in my opinion. I have him at number 2, right behind Ezekiel Elliott, ahead of Aaron Jones, Madison, Hunt, Robinson, Davis, Taylor, all of them. Derrick Henry's a must start this week. You throw him in your lineups. Ryan Tannehill, guys, he was lower on my list, and when I was looking at that game, I actually had to bump him up right away. And let me see where he's showing up here. He pops in at number 15 ahead of Teddy Bridgewater, just under Carson Wentz. So I'm not giving him the 100% credit just yet. I think he could still do some really great things. But we got to just wait and see if he is legitimate. He's going to put up good points, but he's not going to put up 30 every week. Although, with A.J. Brown back, that can very well be the case. So it is trending in an upward direction for Ryan Tannehill. And again, good matchup for them. 19th, not great, but not bad. Running back is going to be the feature here. And I think A.J. Brown has a decent game. Jonnu Smith, you're going to start him even if they are a little tough, you're going to start them in this matchup. If the Titans come out and play those Bills the way they did, they play the Texans the same way. You have no problem, even with some of these rankings. They're not stingiest in the league, so it's doable. On the other side of things, guys, listen, I know David Johnson's been kind of hit or miss, but he is a good start this week. He's been consistent. He's getting the carries. He's getting double-digit points for the most part. I think this week could be a little bit better of a week for him, depending on how the game script goes. If they start getting blown out, then maybe not. But I don't think that's the case. Like Matt said in our Hit It or Quit It segment, the Texans are pretty good, and Deshaun Watson looks really good. We weren't sure how he was going to look with Bill O'Brien gone and with all this stuff going on with no DeAndre. Well, look, they looked pretty good, and Deshaun Watson has an upward trend. He's going up in fantasy points, 4+ points in the last 4 weeks per week. So he went from like 12 to 16 to 20 to 24. Expect that trend to potentially go up. This could be a shootout, and I think he plays his team better than the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen because they're division rivals. They know each other, right? So I love Deshaun Watson this week. He has a good matchup, like we said, 15th against the quarterbacks, Titans. Even in a bad game last night, Josh Allen did some things, and he didn't really run last night. Watson can do that. I do like Fuller this week. We have him a little higher. I'm finally starting to get on the Fuller train. He kind of has the same tag as like James Conner to me. You ride him until he gets hurt. All right, he's bound to get hurt eventually. It's what he does, but you play him until he gets hurt. Brandon Cooks is the clear number 2 outside of that. He's the playmaker, the boomer bust that I would go with over Randall Cobb at this point. It's kind of, I think Brandon Cooks is a good start here this week, by the way. Even if Dory Jackson doesn't seem to be coming back anytime soon. So the secondary for the Titans is definitely hurting right now. They have Malcolm Butler, who's going to line up on Fuller most likely, or Cooks. Just double check to see, kind of how I'm going to watch the film and see how Malcolm Butler played them. Clearly, he was on A.J. Brown, I'm sorry, not A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs yesterday, I believe. But I want to see how he played that, if he shadowed them. I don't think he does to that degree. So if he doesn't, then I think both of them could have a decent game. I think Fuller could have the bigger game this week, and I think he does. Looks like Jordan Atkins is out. If he is, unfortunately, Fells, while he did have good value, and I would have had him higher on my list if we find out Atkins is out. I'm not trusting him this week, unfortunately. Unless I find out Atkins is out, Darren Fells is pretty much not going to be a factor. The problem here is that, Deshaun actually does use his tight ends. The problem is that they always utilize both these tight ends. So we kind of saw, I thought it was going to be more targets last week, but we saw the production at least and the looks for the touchdown. And that's what Deshaun does. He does target the tight ends quite a bit in the red zone. So listen, if Atkins is out, I do like Fells again. You could definitely throw him in this matchup. 9th against, tight ends and giving up the 9th most points rather to tight ends. That's a great matchup. So if Atkins is out, Fells to me is actually a must start. He'd be a top 10 tight end this week. On the other side of things, Ryan Tannehill, like we said, you could start him. Just be mindful. I don't think he's going to put up that every week. But with A.J. Brown back, that could be the case. So who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Derrick Henry's a must start. You're going to do it in a really good matchup. A.J. Brown, tough matchup, but you're still going to do it here. 19th against wide receivers, but A.J. Brown's dynamic. Jonnu Smith, you can feel good starting him. It's not the worst matchup in the world. It is divisional, so be mindful that maybe one of the two will pan out. I think maybe either A.J. Brown or Jonnu Smith has a better day. And we could see Corey Davis and Humphries come back that could vulture some targets. So just be a little mindful of that. I don't think that will happen, but it's possible. And just to go back, just to clarify, Texans defense here, I wouldn't start them, even though they've had a decent, even though they're projected decent here. Titans, a little hard to trust as well. I'm probably staying away from both of them as of right now. Moving right along here, we have the Cleveland Browns against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one I'm excited about, guys. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think you're going to see a lot of fantasy points coming out in this game. And before I get into that, the reason why I say that is, listen, the Steelers, sure, they are stingy in a lot of areas. The one area, though, that they have let up points is to wide receivers. I think if this becomes kind of one of those shootout kind of games, not just Odell and Landry, but I really do think Kareem Hunt gets more of the receiving game going this week. Still has a really good game. So for me, Baker is going to have a tough time here. I don't recommend starting Baker, but Odell you can fire up. Landry you can even fire up in a flex if you have to. I think he even has a better game than he did last week. And maybe Hooper. Hooper, like we said, he was one of my hit it or quit it's. He's getting a lot of targets right now, 17 over the last 2 weeks. He had 10 last week. If that continues, it's a high volume tight end, so you're going to start Hooper. Even in a tough matchup, this game could be a shootout. So, hey, listen, one play is all you need from him to get a touchdown, and all of a sudden you're having a great game from Austin Hooper. So for me, I love the tight end. I love the wide receivers this week. I like Austin Hooper, and I do like Kareem Hunt. I have Kareem Hunt pretty high here. Let me see where I have him ranked on my list. He comes in at number 4 this week, even despite a tough matchup. Like I said, I expect the receiving game to help out Kareem Hunt here, screens and so forth to open it up a little bit. And I do expect Ernst Johnson to kind of handle more of a ground and pound load against this team, which could open up more opportunities for passing for Kareem Hunt. I do actually really like him. I think it's a sneaky play. The matchup doesn't say start him by any means, but I do think you're going to start Kareem Hunt, and I do think he ends up playing pretty well for you. I don't think he's going to put up, 20 points, but I think he can mirror what he did last week, no doubt about it. Odell, I think he's going to up the value from the 8 points that he produced last week. He got 9 targets. Jarvis Landry's getting 9 targets. The targets are getting there. This could be more of a shootout, especially if the Steelers keep that high-powered offense going. So I do like Odell. I love Jarvis Landry. From a flex spot, from a depth perspective, I should say I love Odell. I like Jarvis Landry. I'm going to start Kareem Hunt. I'm going to bench Baker Mayfield. And Austin Hooper, I'm going to go with this week. I think it's a tougher matchup, but I think the targets are there. I think he could absolutely be utilized a little bit more. I think they're going to focus in on some other pieces. He's kind of the 4th option. So I think he actually does benefit this week. Now, on the other side of things, this is an interesting team. Obviously, we're going to talk about Chase Claypool. Obviously, we're going to talk about, the other receivers here, Deontay Johnson and so forth. I think the biggest question mark, though, is at running back. The Browns are 22nd in terms of giving up fantasy points. They're very stingy. They're in the top half of the least amount points given, right? And that's where they really are pretty good. That defensive line is good. The linebackers are good. Okay, the secondary's been banged up. Greedy Williams has been out for multiple weeks. So Ward was banged up in and out of the lineup. So I don't know if Greedy will be back. Keep mind on that. Check that out, because if that does happen, then the secondary might be a little bit better here. That could open up a little bit here for the Cleveland Browns in terms of having stingier defense there. But with that being said, as of right now, they have been really bad against the wide receivers. You're obviously going to start Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he has a bounce back week here. Chase Claypool, I do think he gets more involved now. Even if Deontay Johnson is in, part of me actually likes Chase Claypool even over Deontay. I've never been a huge fan of Deontay. He gets a ton of targets, but it seems like he needs to get 12 target volume in order to be anything. And it seems like Chase Claypool can take it to the house on any given play, which he does very frequently. So I think if you're talking about the 2 guys that you want to own from this wide receiver core, Juju will come and bounce back. I think Chase Claypool is sneaking up into that area. Although Deontay Johnson has some value, I just think that if you have some good depth and you can afford it, maybe trade Deontay Johnson and see if someone still has the value for him, and trade him for a running back if you need that, which is kind of one of my strategies that I might implement this week. That being said, let's talk about James Conner. It is a tough matchup for them, and I do expect him to play it pretty well, but James Conner is pretty solid. You're not going to not start him. The last week, tough matchup. He still put up 13, 14 points here against Philadelphia. This could be one of those tough matchups as well. I'm a little lower on Conner this week. I do have him in my, let's see here, I have him at number 11, so I have him outside the top 10 in even a juicy matchup here. It could be very touchdown dependent, and I don't like touchdown dependency. I like volume. I like what I think is going to be consistent production and touchdowns. So touchdown dependent doesn't do it for me. You can't make top 10 on my list if you're going to be that way this week. So James Conner, little tick down, not too much, but just be mindful. This could be a much bigger passing game, and you might see Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster come really firing this week. Eric Ebron, by the way, good sleeper pick as well this week. I do like him. It's been kind of rough on the points themselves, but 6 targets last week, 5 receptions on that. If he got a touchdown, listen, that's a good day. So again, he could be a little touchdown dependent, but I do like him as a sleeper this week. Browns are giving up the 4th most points to tight ends. So, again, if you need a tight end streamer, if you have someone, Hunter Henry on bye, Jared Cook on bye, right? Darren Waller on bye, maybe you take a flyer on Eric Ebron. He could be a good option for you this week. The next matchup here, guys, is the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this should be a really intriguing matchup here. I'm a Washington football fan, so I know I'm going to be watching this game to see if the Eagles lose. And if Washington can beat the Giants, all of a sudden, hey, we're winning the division. We'll be first place. But that all being said, it's going to be a tough matchup. No doubt about it here. Before we go into Baltimore, though, I'm going to start with the Eagles because one of my hit it or quit it's at quarterback this week was Carson Wentz. Now, I spoke about Carson Wentz's stats and what he's been doing the last couple of weeks, and I actually have him as a hit it. I like him. I think he's available in a lot of leagues right now, and he could be someone you could pick up that may have a little tough schedule coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks, next 2 or 3 weeks. But after that, he gets a really good schedule. And Wentz has increased, guys. The last 3 weeks, he's averaged over 17 points per game. He's had 20 plus fantasy points 2 weeks in a row outside of last week with the 17 against a good Pittsburgh team. One of the best defenses in the league. So I don't actually worry about him against bad defenses or good defenses now. I actually think Carson Wentz could do something, and it could be because of Travis Fulgham. Listen, I actually put a bet on him, guys, to score a touchdown in that game. I had a parlay going that I would have won $1,000. Unfortunately, the second guy didn't get me that touchdown. I did have a separate bet for him that I put $1 on for Travis Fulgham. Ended up winning $40. So I'm really happy with him. Let me give you this stat. Ready? 13 targets, 10 catches, 152 yards, and a touchdown. That's not just a boom play like he did last week. That is premier receiver status for a team that needs one of those. Even if Rager comes back, they're kind of, I don't know how Rager is a one-trick pony. I know Deshaun is in a way, but Rager, we haven't seen what he really is overall yet. Fulgham seems like he has explosion. He could be a number 1 receiver. I'm not saying he is a number 1 like some of these other stud guys, but I'm saying he has that package where he looks like he could be a guy that could do everything, make some fancy catches, jump for the ball. He has some good route running ability. And listen, he was able to open up the offense, and that's the biggest key here. I love Travis Fulgham for that reason. I think he's a good pickup if you got him. He's definitely worth a start if you need him at wide receiver. Greg Ward's not going to compete for the job. And even if Rager comes back next week, Fulgham's still going to be part of the game plan, I think, moving forward. There's no doubt about it. He has to have earned himself a role here. I mean, what other receivers put up 26 points for the Eagles this year? Go ahead. Go look and see if there has been one. All right? With that being said, Miles Sanders, it is a tough matchup for him this week. The Ravens are toughest against the run, in my opinion, and Sanders could have a rough week, although Sanders played against Pittsburgh and had a good game yesterday as well. So we want to keep feeding him the ball. I think he's going to have a tough matchup this week. You're not going to not start him, but I do have Miles Sanders still at number 9. I think that he is a vocal point in this offense. If Fulgham can spread it out a little bit more, if Ertz can get going just a little bit, maybe they come back a little healthier. If Wentz continues to keep getting better and start getting his confidence back, I think it's going to be good things for Miles Sanders. Could get some things done in the pass game as well, so don't be surprised if that's the route they could go. 4 targets last week, could be more, right? I love Travis Fulgham this week. Ertz, however, I'm a little afraid. I'm quitting on him. Matt had him on a hit it or quit it list as a quit. Move on from Ertz. Try to trade him. Goddard's probably the better tight end here. He's not happy there. You can tell. And it just seems like the chemistry is just not there anymore between Ertz, Wentz, and just the Eagles in general. I don't expect Ertz to be back next year. So I think if you want to try to trade him now, if you have another option, or try to trade for a different option and package, Ertz with a tight end and someone else and bring him over, I think now's the time to do it, man. I just don't know. He'll have some games, no doubt, but I just don't think he's going to be the same guy that he's been the last couple of years. On the other side of things, the tight end you're going to start, must start. I don't care if the matchup's good or bad, and it's a great matchup this week for Mark Andrews going up against a team that's laying up the third most points to tight ends. He's averaging, 4 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, I think, or something along those lines. A double-digit fantasy points almost every week. He is the number 1 tight end, in my opinion, this week, even over Travis Kelce. You're going to put him in your lineups. You're going to start him against, tell you, they're putting up points against the Eagles in that position. On the other side, Marquise Brown, decent matchup. I am going to be a little hesitant because he's probably going to get a lot of Darius Slay. There's not really other options to spread the ball from that perspective. And I think that is a little weakness for the Baltimore Ravens that you can start with. So I think that's where you kind of start with that one and you move on there. Marquise Brown definitely is in my opinion, I'm not going out of my way to start him. I have him somewhat high. If I look down at my rankings here, I have him at 17. I have him above Odell, Devontae Parker, Chark, and even Jefferson, who has good matchups. So it's not a terrible matchup by any means. And I do like him. But honestly, it might end up by the end of the week, before my final rankings come out, Marquise Brown might get a tick down. I just don't know. I don't like the matchup overall for that defense. And Eagles have been really getting their stride lately. So I do like them. Even though they lost last week, they were in that game. Running backs, I'm really low on all these guys. It is a tough matchup. I don't think the run game is going to be where you get it. I think Lamar Jackson obviously is a must start. Even though it's 24th against quarterbacks, you're not going to not start him, right? And then honestly, again, Carson Wentz, in my opinion, must start. Ravens aren't as good against quarterbacks as you think. They had some injuries, so be mindful. Look out to see what injuries they have. Marlon Humphrey and all those guys, if they're back. But I do like Wentz this week. I think he's going to have a better week. I just don't know if it's going to be to Ertz. Ertz could have a good week, but I just don't trust it. If I can avoid that and go somewhere else with it, that's kind of where I'm thinking right now. With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Dave Sarner, your host on the Rise and Fall Fantasy Football Show. Have a great day and stay safe, and I hope you guys all win your matchups this weekend.